What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 9 of No Late Fees. You got me, Leo V, and of course, with me, as always, Tom is here.
What's up, everybody?
So, Tom, I am super excited because today we are talking about one of my absolute favorite movies, Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. It's probably my favorite Spielberg movie, hands down.
Honestly, this movie gets a lot of credit for a lot of the basis of time travel movies. A lot of movies nowadays, especially even Avengers. What do you mean Back to the Future was bull?
Yeah, and even The Flash too. A lot of their promotional material was Back to the Future, parody style.
Oh, this is not even that. They had a whole thing in there with the alternate actors. So
yes.
They had a spin-off cartoon series. They had a Broadway show that recently came out. Not to mention Rick and Morty, that was based off of Doc and Marty going on their crazy adventures. So you can already see Back to the Future has had a significant impact on pop culture.
Absolutely. And me personally, I've never really been a huge fan of time travel movies. I mean, like minus Terminator and this. They're like my only movies that the only movies that I'm a fan of that are like time travel heavy. But this movie does. I feel like with time travel movies, there's a lot of room for headaches and questions and unnecessary convolution. But this movie, I think it dots all the I's and crosses all the T's in a way where it doesn't treat the audience dumb.
Exactly. It really gives you a strong definition of the butterfly effect. You can make the smallest change and it will ripple into so many changes into the future that you just were not ready for.
Yeah.
So this movie was directed by Robert Zemeckis and was written and co-produced by Robert Gale. It was executive produced by Steven Spielberg with a score by Alan Silvestri.
And before we jump into more notes, I want to say Kathleen Kennedy is involved in this movie, and it's before she was making dog shit fucking movies like their most recent indie and all of Disney Star Wars, in my opinion, and their last like 5 years of fucking Marvel movies. I can't stand that bitch. I fucking hate seeing her name on the screen, even when it's a movie that I enjoy. Just wanted to put that on the record.
I did not even realize that she was a part of this. That's very interesting.
I'll put the shot up right here. I was watching it last night or 2 nights ago. I was like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy. Oh, that pisses me off. But she's involved. If you look back at her resume, she's involved with a bunch of good movies from the 80s and 90s. And it just makes you spin your head and think, what the fuck is she doing nowadays? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway.
So, along with Alan Silvestri, we also had Huey Lewis and then the News that put in 2 amazing songs for this movie, Back in Time and Power of Love. Power of Love being that Power of Love is just that anthem where take me away.
He has a cameo. He is the guy, we'll get into it when we get there, but when they're doing the rehearsal to see if they qualify for the contest or whatever, the one who goes, excuse me, please stop. You're just too loud.
So, of course, this movie stars Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Leah Thompson.
What's his name? Thomas Wilson? What the
Thomas
fuck's
Wilson?
his name?
Tom Wilson, yep. And Crispin Glover. This movie withstands the test of time. And I'm so glad they went with this title and not the title that one of the executives from Universal wanted it to be called. Spaceman from Pluto was going to be the original title for this movie, which
Back to the Future is such a perfect fucking title.
Now, the best part about that was Steven Spielberg's response to that. So they got a letter from the executive saying like, "Oh, this is what we want the movie to be called," and he wrote a letter back saying, "Thank you so much for your humor. We all found it hilarious." So basically telling the guy, "Fuck off, we're not doing that." And he was so embarrassed that he never even spoke about it after. This movie spent 3 months at the top of the box office, and like I said, it put time travel on the map as far as, the movie to go to.
Usually movies nowadays, just like you said, like with the Avengers, they follow Back to the Future rules, or at least they mention Back to the Future in name when clarifying what their rules are. And Back to the Future, man, it only had a $19 million budget, and the box office take home was $388 million.
Holy shit.
For the 80s, dude, that's like $1.5 billion.
It's crazy that they were so successful because they had after the first 5 weeks of shooting, they had to do reshoots because they famously cast Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly because they couldn't get Michael J. Fox at first because he was busy with Family Ties.
Yep.
But eventually, after 5 weeks, they just realized that Eric was not the guy.
It wasn't he. Was he like hard to work with, supposedly, or something? Or
Yes, from what I understand, he would only answer to Marty, and was always
okay.
consistently asking questions, being like, "I don't think Marty would do that," or "I don't feel my character would really do
Okay.
this," or
Fuck
and
off. Gotcha.
he wasn't getting the comedic feel that the character was supposed to be. He was playing it more serious. So in that
Which works
aspect,
sometimes. Like it works for RoboCop. It works for Joker in The Dark Knight. But I feel like with a comedy, you don't really need that. You're not supposed to take the role that serious where you're getting into the character acting in that regard.
right. Like there was one scene where he's like walking backwards and the director said, "Okay, like trip over the curb and, look around." "Oh, I don't know that he would trip over the curb. He might just turn his head." And all right, bro, like clearly this is not working. They called him into the room one day and said, "Hey, we're gonna have to let you go." Unfortunately, that led to the alternate timeline in the Flash movie where
Which is hilarious.
he still got to play the character, and the Marty McFly tattoo will unfortunately forever live in infamy. Before we get started, if you guys can take a second, hit that like and subscribe button down below. It takes 2 seconds for you guys, but it really means a lot to us here at the channel, keeps us going, and let us know down in the comments what movie you want to see next, because let's be honest, we can sit here and talk movies all day long. So we open up our movie on a shot of 17, 18, 20 clocks, just scrolling through. And this scene says so much to you without even having any dialogue in it. We start to really get a look around Doc's apartment and would see he is definitely a absent-minded kind of guy. You see a lot going on. As things are going on, the TVs turns on and we start to hear about all these things going on in the 80s. There was a theft of plutonium going on.
More
And you
foreshadowing.
start to see that Doc has these machines that he's built to have like his coffee be made and his dog food for his dog to be dumped out, but clearly hasn't been there in a few days because boy, there's a nasty pile of dog food just hanging out there.
You could tell right off the bat too, just by watching this scene go by and all the imagery they put on the screen. You can tell whoever's home it is incredibly smart, but they're fucking crazy.
Oh yeah,
You know
there
what I
was a
mean?
newspaper article on the wall that said that the what did it say? The Brown mansion was destroyed and the Brown estate sold to developers. There was 435 prime acres, which turns out to be, what is it? 18,948,600 square feet of land.
Is that
Just
what
to
becomes
kind
the
of
mall? Is that the mall?
No, that's just the land that Doc had at the moment. They
Oh,
never said
so that's
that was his
where his
family
fortune.
estate.
That's where his
Yes.
fortune came from.
So
Gotcha. Okay.
essentially, yeah, he had to sell that off to essentially fund any of his experiments.
Gotcha. Okay.
So in walks our main character, Marty McFly, this rock
Marty
and roll
McFly.
teenager. He's got the aviators on, all denimed out. My man's got his skateboard and he drops it in, and that's where we see this plutonium container that it crashes into. Doc, what are you doing with plutonium, bro?
Again, fucking crazy. Mad scientist.
One of those things everyone's always asking, how did Marty end up hanging out with Doc? The unlikely duo that they are.
I love Marty and Doc together. Their comedic timing, their chemistry, all of it is fucking perfect. But I just want to know, why is a 17-year-old boy hanging out with, like, what is he, 65 probably? Like, they've been friends for a while. Like,
Yeah.
it was the 80s. I get it. It was different, but I don't know.
And from my understanding, people around town were always saying like, "Oh, Doc Brown, he's fucking nuts. Don't go around him. You never know what you're going to get when you're around him." And Marty said, okay, cool. Let me go see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And he went and he hung out with him, and he kind of met Doc. And once the two of them kind of got to know each other, they formed this bond that we kind of jump into at the as the movie gets into.
I think he just wanted someone to build him a gigantic amplifier.
Well, and first of all, what is Doc even doing with that kind of an amplifier? Because we see Marty turning all the dials up to 11. He is 100% gonna blow this shit to smithereens.
Mhm.
And well, he pulls out that guitar pick and pow! You see him just blast through the wall. And at that point, you're like, rock and roll.
This movie very quickly, it encapsulates the 80s so good. The music, the clothes, the lingo, the skateboarding, like all of it, man. It just, if you were there especially, it captures the 80s so well. And if you weren't there, it shows what it was very well.
Shows you exactly what you missed.
Yeah. I fucking love this movie. The rebel attitudes, you know what I mean? Like it's everywhere, sprinkled throughout the movie. It's so good.
So Marty gets a phone call at Doc's house. Doc calls him and says, "Marty, I need you to meet me at the Twin Pines Mall tonight at 1:15 a.m.
Wait a minute, 1:15 in the morning?
Why are we going to the mall at 1:15, Doc? It's closed. What can we possibly be doing?"
Yeah.
But he has some sort of experiment that he was working on, and all of a sudden, all the alarms on all of his clocks start going off. Doc goes, "Oh, good. It means they're all 25 minutes slow." And we get the infamous,
Are you telling me that it's 8:25?
Precisely.
Damn. I'm late for school.
This also, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first curse in the movie, right?
yeah.
Dude, for a PG movie, there's a lot of curses in this movie. I guess it's just at this time, we just went over Ghostbusters. There's a lot of things in there that cross the line of a PG rating.
Yeah.
There's so many shits. There's bitch. There's asshole. There's damn. A lot of curses in this movie for a family-friendly, like, sci-fi comedy movie.
I didn't realize it was PG. Half the
PG.
time I barely look at the ratings on things. I assumed it would have been PG-13 for the 80s at least.
You got to think about it. In the 80s, it was like PG or it was a hard rated R. There was like no middle section. There was no gray area. It was like, oh well, there's no F-bombs and there's no titties, so we're just gonna make it PG. And if it's a cartoon, it's G.
And then we get that Huey Lewis. And like you said, we really get a nice feel for the 80s. There's a guy driving around in a Jeep, and Marty just kind of hitchhikes himself onto the back of it.
Dude, this is the movie. So when I was a kid, I skateboarded for a long time when I was a kid. I grew up skateboarding. And this movie is what made me meet my parents down the street when they were getting home from work. And I would just hitch a ride on the side of the car, and I would just make them pull me down the street.
I can't say that I ever had the luxury of doing that, because the skateboard I had as a kid was bullshit. It was shaped like a fish. It had 3 colored tiger heads on the bottom with like guardrails so you couldn't grind on anything.
That's no fun.
It was awful. Not that I could do any kind of tricks. The guy that is driving the Jeep is actually the stunt coordinator for the movie.
Is he?
And he's wearing a Mountain Dew hat, which Mountain Dew was
The one who
apparently
looks back?
around. Yeah,
When it looks back, yes.
yeah. That I was like, wait a second, Mountain Dew was around in 1985. I feel like I don't remember that coming around until like the mid 90s, or at least having like a surge. But so as we're driving around, there's a lot of stuff going on in the town. If you're eagle-eyed like I am, you'll start to notice like some of the names of the buildings. The Texaco gas station, with the gas being only $1.09.
There's time references all sprinkled throughout this movie.
The movie theater, which I didn't realize till watching this time, got turned into a church. There's like a Jesus Saves cross across the top of it. I was like, that's an interesting place to turn an old movie theater into.
Is that the same movie theater that gets turned into a rated X theater later on?
Yeah, that was playing Orgy American.
And dude, I said this to you off camera, but I'll say it again now. I can't think of a movie off the top of my head that was better at setting up plot points with really good payoffs all sprinkled throughout the movie. There's so many good payoffs in this movie, whether it's important A plots or like B and C subplots. They're everywhere. The subplots payoffs are fucking everywhere.
They went ham on these, and a lot of people like to call them Easter eggs. If you're paying attention, you'll see all the Easter eggs. No, bro, that's just called time travel. If you're paying attention, you go, okay, I remember seeing. Oh, okay. You start putting two and two together.
That's just called the plot. An Easter egg would be something else that's, time travel related, or a song having back in time, like in the lyrics. That's kind of an Easter egg. Something that is a character driven plot point. That's not an Easter egg. That's literally a plot point. That's a payoff. That's an arc.
I like my Easter eggs to be like a shout out to a whole different movie, or like something within a franchise, but something parallel.
Yeah.
So Marty rolls up to his school. It's all graffitied up, not looking that great. We meet his girlfriend, Jennifer Parker, who says, you better come this way because the principal's looking for you and you don't want to get caught.
Yeah.
So they sneak into school, and of course, they get caught. So Principal Strickland is just this hard-ass principal that does not take any crap from any slackers.
No, you don't want to be a slacker, just like your father, McFly.
He was a slacker, too.
We find out that Marty's band is on the tryout list to play for the dance. Yes. And we get the classic line, no McFly has ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
Yes.
Well, history is about to change. We get into Marty and the Pinheads is the name of their band.
Yes.
So they start rocking out with a Huey Lewis tune. And like you said before, Huey hops on the megaphone and goes, hold on, fellas. I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
Another thing that it kind of parallels later on, when Marty plays, that kind of music in the 50s, they're all not ready for it. So it's kind of like how the adults in the 80s looked at rock and roll at that point. So there's a bunch of cool parallels and payoffs like that. I love it.
So Marty's getting kind of down on himself, and Jennifer reminds him what Doc's always telling him.
I know. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Marty is distracted. You get to see the infamous meme in the 1980s where like Jennifer's trying to talk to him and Marty's getting distracted by the girls that walk by.
Yeah, that meme is still alive today, of like the guy walking with his girlfriend and checking out the other girl's ass while she walks by.
And that is where this meme, I would say this is where this meme came from. It's been going on forever.
It has to be. She had a very calm reaction from it.
Extremely, just like, hey, over here.
Eyes over here. Yeah, I think nowadays you're getting smacked over that shit.
We get to see Marty's dream truck, the 1985 Toyota SR5 Extra Cab, which, not for nothing, is a banging looking truck.
It's a little beast. It's not big, but it looks like a fucking beast.
Yeah. Oddly enough, there's an auto place over by where I work, and they have a replica of this truck. They have a replica of the Goldie Wilson van from when they were driving around, and they have a DeLorean that they like keep on property. So every once in a while I drive by just to be like, oh, I saw the DeLorean today.
Yeah, it's going to be a good day then.
Well worth it.
Dude, one time I was on the Parkway, or on the Turnpike, one of the two, on the way to New York Comic Con one year, and this fucking truck just passes by. I'm like casually driving. I look to my right, Batmobile on the bed of a truck, just going by. I'm like, oh, that's fucking awesome.
It's the little things in life that gets us nerds going. What can I say?
Yes, 100 fucking 1,000%.
So we get this old lady that shows up, save the clock tower, letting them know 30 years ago how everything happened with the clock tower. It was struck by lightning, and now the mayor wants to replace the clock. So she gives them a flyer, and
another setup.
This I would say the first like 20 minutes of this movie, if you're really paying attention, is all just plot setups that are just going to get knocked down as we go.
They don't get knocked down. They get knocked out of the fucking park, because every payoff, even if it's a small one, is paid off very, very well.
So Marty gets his ass home, and we see that he lives in Lyon Estates. So he skates himself in, and he pulls in, and he sees the car that he is supposed to use tomorrow smashed up like that like button. Heyo.
The car he was supposed to borrow is fucking wrecked, and I love how we meet Biff. He's such a fucking asshole, dude. So how are you gonna have the balls to borrow someone's car, you total it, and the only thing you say to the person is, "You're gonna pay for this cleaning bill, right? I spilled a beer on here while I was driving."
You admit to drinking and driving, and then turn around and say, "Oh, I didn't know the car had a blind spot."
Yeah. But dude, this scene sets up how his parents and Biff are to a T. Biff is a fucking asshole, and it shows how he's been bullying George since they were in high school together.
Say hi to your mom for me.
George is the biggest beta fucking pussy on the planet. Like I said, guy totals his car and he's apologizing to him. The mom is just walking in. She's drinking her fucking wine. She's miserable. She's complaining about everything. And you get like a picture of Marty's home life painted out perfectly.
Yeah. And you really don't even need a whole lot of interaction with his parents to know that George has absolutely been bullied his entire life. His self-confidence is a -7. And Lorraine is just absolutely piss poor, destroyed, sad with her life. So she's just going to drink it all away.
Even his family, like his sister kind of seems like the black sheep. The brother seems like he's the one who has like a shitty part-time job, but like he's talking down to Marty, and George is just kind of lecturing everyone, but like half paying attention and not really listening to Lorraine when she talks. And this is when we get the awesome the laugh. That laugh is fucking great.
Shout out to Crispin Glover, because honestly, George McFly is the worst fucking nerd. You really just want to you want to give him a wedgie at that point, but he's just played so well, and you just can't help but feel bad for him at the same time.
He's doing a very good job, because like you said, if you could feel pity for the guy, and if you feel like if you were there you'd want to stick up for him, then he's doing his job right.
He's doing his job right.
Mm-hmm. But dude, both of them do such a good job at portraying these miserable, pathetic versions of Marty's parents that later on, when you see him in the movie where he's the young version of his like weaker self, but then later on he's a successful writer and he's more confident and like he plays it off better. And Lorraine is kind of slutty. We're going to be honest. She's very slutty. She plays that version of herself very well. Again, the actors are just killing it. They give us a little backstory of how they met. They talk about him getting hit by her father's car.
The Enchantment Under the Sea dance. And how they had their first kiss. That was when I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life with him, with that miserable look on her face.
Yes.
Chugging down the vodka. So Doc calls Marty at like 12:30 just to remind him to bring a video camera that he forgot, because he wants to make sure that everything that he has got going on tonight is on film, because it's going to be
you can tell Marty probably gets these weird requests all the time, because obviously if he thought it was that important, he wouldn't have been sleeping. Like, what is it, half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, before you're supposed to meet him? He's just like, no, I'm awake.
And I've been here the whole time. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Marty rolls up to the Twin Pines Mall at 1:16 a.m. He's a minute late, but we won't tell anybody. And we get to meet finally Doc and his pet companion Einstein.
I fucking love Einstein.
Einstein is honestly one of the best characters in this movie, and he does not get enough screen time.
I feel bad for Einstein, man. What if he didn't fucking survive?
Yeah, listen, we'll get there.
Okay.
So he opens up the back of this truck that he's got, and all of a sudden he rolls out this epic-looking space contraption that anyone from the 80s will recognize as a classic model DeLorean. But Doc has taken this thing and just retrofitted it to the extreme.
Yes, we see the fucking DeLorean, dude. It's personally for me, it's in the same category as the Ecto-1. It's in the 100%. Same category as the Batmobile. Those three, I think, are the most iconic movie cars ever.
Honestly, when that car came out, I just remember the first time watching it, the smoke that was coming out the back, and my first thought was, how the hell did he get in there? Because doors. even with going doors, even with going doors, there was like this much space on either side.
It's a very small car.
The DeLorean
still-
is one of my favorite. Like, I'm gonna call it a character in the movie because it is the best character in this movie.
Yeah, it is a
Hands
character in its own right. Yeah,
So Doc whips out this remote control and
it's like an RC car. It's like an
starts
RC.
whipping it around the parking lot, and it starts like revving the engine up, and lets Marty know.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Yeah,
So all of a sudden, he flicks a switch, and the car starts dashing towards them. And you see Marty kind of like take a couple steps off to the side, like, I'm not trying to get hit by this car, bro. And Doc
You know
gives him
what?
a look like, get your
pause
ass
for a second.
fucking back
Pause
here.
for a second. That motherfucker put Einstein in the car
Oh shit!
as his,
I skipped
as
over
his
that.
fucking test dummy.
Yes, he did.
Fucking, you're gonna put Einstein. What if Einstein didn't survive, motherfucker? And you're putting Einstein in this time travel experiment, but he does survive, so it's not the point.
does,
But
yes.
motherfucker, don't put the dog in there.
I mean, if you really want to get technical, Einstein really wasn't in there. It was just an actor in a dog suit.
You know what I
literally,
mean?
Literally,
Leo.
they had to have somebody, a dog in the driver's seat, and was actually able to drive the car. So there's a really goofy looking dog mask. If you were to like slow it down and really look at it,
I never
the
noticed
dog
that.
mask is just awful.
Yeah, but it's the principle. I'm a fucking dog lover, so I don't want to put the dog in the seat for the experiment. I don't know.
So we get the DeLorean going up to 88 miles per hour, and I think for me this is the coolest like version of what going through time would look like. You see all the lights that come off the back, creating this portal that just kind of opens up, and boom, you just end up shooting right through it.
And dude, the CG still holds up.
100%.
I was kind of looking for it this last watch through and like, oh, you know what? I haven't watched it in a while. I wonder what the CG looks like. You know what I mean? Still holds up. When the DeLorean comes back, it's awesome how it's just covered in ice.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and Einstein survives. They show fucking
Thankfully.
Einstein. Thankfully, Einstein survived. That poor fucking dog. Then we get the most random thing ever. I even thought it was random when I was a kid. Fucking Libyan terrorists show up. Because that's the payoff from when they planted the seed with the news report that plutonium was stolen. It was
A group of Libyan nationalists
Yes.
who claimed responsibility for it.
and he told the Libyans that he would build them a bomb.
but he
just-
gave them just not a bomb, actually.
No, what did he give him? I forget what he said.
A
right,
shoddy
yes.
bomb casing filled with used pinball machine parts. There it is.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, they're interrupted by said Libyan terrorists. They roll up and they shoot Doc. Point
Yes.
blank.
Yes.
They don't waste any time. So Marty, trying to run for his life,
That's
jumped
another
into
curse
the
that's in there.
DeLorean. First of all, we need to talk about who manufactured guns and cars in the 80s, because these guns and cars stall and backfire and don't work more than any guns or cars I've ever seen in any fucking time period.
Well, I'm not sure if this is correct, but maybe Back to the Future kind of started that movie trope. They probably didn't, but they did so much other good stuff as far as like movies copying off of it and doing tropes and parodies of it. Maybe they started it's a tense filled moment. Shit, the car won't start, or you're about to get shot, but the bullet's jammed and you can't shoot.
So Marty's speeding through the parking lot and he goes, "Let's see if you bastards can handle 90, completely forgetting that Doc had put plutonium in there again and was like ready to go. Nope. And next thing we know, he's sent off to the past and then crash landing into some barn
Yep.
with the hazard lights going off and just a mess.
Which Doc said earlier that the land was owned by Mr. Peabody, right?
That's correct. Yep. Old man
the
Peabody.
family we meet is Old Man Peabody.
Now, funny thing about that, the little kid's name is Sherman, which is a callback to Sherman and Mr. Peabody, which was an old cartoon where they would like travel through historical events and, get to know history.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was a nice little callback. And I want to say, I forget what year it was, but the like mid like 2010s, I want to say. They came out with a more recently animated movie, and like even they nodded at going 88 miles per hour. So
Oh, did they?
that's an Easter egg, folks, where one
That is
movie
an Easter egg.
references a completely separate movie.
Yes, that is an Easter egg.
So the family shows up, and they are under the impression that it's a spaceman, because with a space gull-wing door that opens, and Marty's in a
And he has
fucking
the
hazmat
radiation suit. Yep.
So the kids are like, "Holy shit! It's an alien! Shoot it!"
Yeah.
So of course now the car's going to start working again, so Marty can speed off and run over a pine tree. My pine.
Yes. Maybe that event is what made him sell the property.
Because old man Peabody decided he wanted to breed pine trees.
Mm-hmm.
All right. By all means, Mr. Peabody, do your thing.
There's a lot of coincidences and changes that kind of break the rules of their time travel, where like you can't talk to certain people, or like things that are already established and your timeline will change. But there's a couple things throughout the movie that actually happened because of Marty McFly being involved in things.
100%. Yeah, there's a lot of both positive and I would say some negative changes of the things that he does, but he definitely has more of an effect than one would think.
Yeah.
Based on these kind of movies where you think going into it, go, okay, step on as little butterflies as possible. And even fixing butterflies, he steps on butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
Marty pulls off to the side of the road and sees that there's a sign for Lion Estates, which is the development that he lives in, but it's all open land and none of it's been developed yet. So that's when he starts putting two and two together that he might not be where he thinks he is, but, still unsure.
And then he goes into town.
Yes.
And it's clearly the 1950s, and then he finds a newspaper and he finds out it's 1955.
Holy shit, it's 1955. So he realizes that he needs to find the doc ASAP. So he goes into Lou's Cafe, which in the 80s was the like aerobics place that he drove by where all the ladies were doing the workouts. We get in there and he's looking through the phone book. He finds some information on where Doc lives. And he asks the guy behind the bar if he can help him, find it.
What's up with the life vest?
You want a Pepsi free? You can't. You got to pay for it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, young Biff walks in, going McFly, and we see that he was not talking to young Marty, but to George, who was sitting right next to him.
They both kind of move their head at the same time. They scratch their head, and they both
look over. And like very
they mirror each other. Yes, they mirror each other.
Speaking of deja vu, the interaction that Biff and George have is essentially word for word the same one that they had from the beginning. Instead of it's regular work, it's homework.
It's homework.
How
do you expect me to? I can't hand in my homework if it's in your handwriting. I got to copy it in mine, or I got to type it up. How he said.
I'll get kicked out of school.
So you can very much see that Biff has been doing this to George for 30 years. This has been a consistent part of George's life that he eventually just went, okay, cool. This is how my life is now. While we're there, we end up meeting a young janitor named Goldie Wilson, and it's unclear as to whether Marty drops the idea for him becoming the mayor on him, or if this was something that he was gonna do.
I think he does. I think he 1000% does. He says, "Oh, this guy's gonna be mayor," and he goes, "Mayor? Yeah." I think it's another thing that Marty highly affects what the outcome is going to be in his timeline.
Part of me wants to think that it's not, because it was already something that happened before he went back in time.
Maybe he wouldn't have realized it as early. Maybe he would have.
Correct. Yeah, maybe it would have been something later in line, but yeah, Marty definitely put his hand in that and stirred around a little bit. Through all of this, George ends up leaving. Marty chases after him, finds his bike, and notices that George is up in a tree with a pair of binoculars, and it looks like he might be bird watching.
He's bird watching.
Bird watching, I think he's peeping in on. It looks like could be Lorraine, but it's either Lorraine or her mom.
He's a fucking pervert.
He is a fucking pervert.
He's a fucking pervert on the top of the tree with binoculars, peeping in on his future wife.
So somehow he manages to fall out of the tree when Marty tries to get his attention, but he falls to the ground and is almost hit by a car, but Marty jumps in and kind of pushes him out of the way, which sets up this whole movie because, as we know, George was supposed to get hit by that car.
Yes.
But
and
the dad says another one of those kids jumped out and in front of my car again, which means that he's gotten caught doing this before.
Yes, it's probably He's been he's been a peeping Tom for a while now.
He's been wanting to see those blue spotted boobies for quite some time.
Like I said, George is a fucking pervert.
So Marty ends up getting hit by the car and wakes up and is trying to figure out what's going on, thinks all this is a dream, and he hears his mom's voice, and he's a little bit kind of back to reality almost. And then she says, yeah, you're safe here in good old 1955.
Mm-hmm. And dude, right off the bat, Lorraine is a fucking creep. Right off the bat.
She's a pervert too.
She's a pervert too. She's touching him. She took his pants off. She's like sitting right next to him. Like, bitch, you just met this fucking guy.
Right.
And you're throwing yourself at him.
It's the Florence Nightingale effect. They just throw themselves at people who they feel bad for.
And this obviously wasn't a term at the time, but that bitch is fucking thirsty. I feel like whoever found her next during this time, she was keeping around.
Yeah, this was clearly not the first time she's had a boy in her room.
No.
Especially the way she runs out of the room, like when her mom calls up and catches them, and she runs out. You can see in the mirror, she looks back and she is just like looking him up and down like a whole piece of meat.
Yeah, like I said, why'd you take his fucking pants off? Why'd you take his fucking pants off? And Mom, he could stay in my room.
Well, she had to take his pants off because they had to call him Calvin Klein because, just make another 80s reference.
Yep.
I've never seen purple underwear before, Calvin.
Well, your name's on your underwear, Calvin. Calvin Klein. But dude, actually, we kind of looked over it. Marty's even kind of weird too. Marty realizes it's his mom, and he goes, "You're so hot. You're so hot." Ha. He's gonna say hot, but he doesn't. But that's obviously what he was leaning towards.
Well, because he's only seen his mom that way,
fat, ugly, wrinkly, and an alcoholic and smoking. So yeah,
this is a drastic difference for him.
Yes.
So they get called downstairs by her mom, and we get to meet the rest of her family. She's got siblings. Her dad is the typical 50s dad, rolling the TV over so they can watch TV while they eat. Yep. And of course, we get to see little jailbird Joey in his playpen wearing his black and white stripes. Clearly,
we just leave him in there. He doesn't like to come out of there. He cries.
Better get used to these bars, kid.
Yeah.
Marty starts asking for directions for where Doc is, and
who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
Anytime I pass by any kind of street that says John F. Kennedy anything, who the hell is John F. Kennedy? So we find out obviously where Doc lives. And after Lorraine makes a vicious grab for those thighs, Marty makes a run for it and goes,
he can stay in my room.
Marty, do I know your mother? I think you might. You might have an idea of who she is.
Telling you.
Or my favorite line, Lorraine, if you ever have a kid like that, I'll disown you.
I'll disown you.
Which, we don't actually ever hear anything about her parents, so
this is true.
It's very possible that.
Yeah, man, she's a fucking weirdo though. She's a fucking creep. She's a creep. George is a pervert, and it's just funny to watch play out.
They were a match made in space.
Yeah,
that's a joke because we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Marty finds Doc and rolls up to this huge mansion and knocks on the door. And Doc's got this giant fucking trapezoidy diamond thing on his head and pulls Marty in and sticks a suction cup to it and goes, "All right, I'm gonna read your mind. Don't say anything. Cool." And for the most part, he's not correct, but he's not far off. Like you've traveled from a great distance. That's pretty true.
Well, I think like he's doing like the terrible psychic routine where you can kind of just say like vague answers that most people could relate with.
Eventually, they'll give you enough information where you can say what's happening.
Exactly.
So he is unconvincingly trying to get Doc to believe him about being from the future. And it's not until he brings up the bruise on his forehead that Doc kind of believes him, because obviously Doc had just told him he invented time travel because he was standing on a toilet, hanging up a clock, and he fell. And next thing you knew, the flux capacitor was in his head.
Yep.
So Doc finally understands, hey, wait a second, this could be a thing.
Yeah, and then he realizes that, holy shit, he invents time travel, and Marty brings him to see the DeLorean, and he shows him the flux capacitor because he shows Marty the drawing he did of the flux capacitor, and then this fucking kid brings him to the DeLorean and shows him the actual flux capacitor.
They head back to Doc's house. They're watching the video of all the events that kind of took place, and Doc was starting to realize that he might actually be from the future. Marty was trying to convince him earlier. He had a picture of his siblings, and Doc was like, "Yeah, this is fake. Look, they cut off your brother's head."
That was just a throwaway line.
Yeah, something that wasn't even supposed to be anything. And then later on, once he realized that he had met his parents, then Doc goes, "Wait a minute, let me see that picture again," because then he starts to realize that it's fading away, not just, deleted. He's being erased from existence because Marty somehow managed to interfere with his parents' meeting.
Also, right here is when they established that they can't get plutonium in 1955, and to harness the lightning from the clock tower, because Marty still has the flyer of the lady that was handing out the flyer saying, save the clock tower in the beginning. And now they know when lightning is going to strike, exactly on what date, exactly at what time. And he comes up with this crazy idea to harness the lightning bolt that hits the clock tower to repower the DeLorean so Marty can go back to the future.
Yeah, because, plutonium may be easy to get to in 1985.
I'm sure it's available at every convenience store in 1985.
But how else are you going to get to 1.21 gigawatts?
Gigawatts of electricity. 21 gigawatts!
Classic fucking line, man.
Which Christopher Lloyd just read gigawatts wrong, and they ended up enjoying it so much that they just kept it. So the next day, Marty and Doc head to school to try to essentially get Marty's parents to meet each other, because Marty fucked up big time. Mm-hmm. And now he has an extra bit of stress, not only to get back to the future, but to get back there while there's still a future to get back to.
Yes.
So they go to school, and George has this kick me sign that somebody put on him. So he's just getting bullied left and right by everybody. And I
love how Doc goes, he goes, which one's your dad? And he points to him and he goes, you sure you're not adopted?
So them all going to school together really kind of hones in on the main kind of how this movie was created. Robert Zemeckis was at his childhood home and happened to be going through his parents' yearbooks from high school. And he was wondering, would I be friends with my parents had I gone to high school with them? Would we have gone to the same clubs? We've been into the same things.
So I think I see what you're saying, like where it's interesting to think, because every child for some reason assumes that their parents were always the same way as they met them as their childhood.
Adults. Yep.
Yeah. But it shows that your parents could be rebels, could be promiscuous teenagers, can make mistakes, could be bullies, could be bullied. And I think if he went back, so in another timeline, if he existed in that time but wasn't related to both of them, I think him and his dad, or George, wouldn't have been friends. But I think him and Lorraine they would have gotten into some trouble together.
I could see
If they
that.
weren't, let's just
If they-
hypothetically
yes,
say
correct,
they weren't
not
related.
Not related.
Yes.
We don't condone those kinds
No.
of relationships here.
No.
What about you? Would you be friends with your parents if you went to high school with them now?
Dude, my mom was fucking nuts when she was a kid. She was a hippie.
Oh yeah.
She was a fucking hippie. She drove like cross country to California in a van and partied her ass off and did a lot of acid and shit. I'll ask my mom before I can put that in the video, but she did a lot of drugs and she wasn't afraid to, she doesn't shy away from mentioning it. But my mom was a partier. Dad was a partier. So they had fun as kids.
I was gonna say my dad was into baseball. So I don't think that him and I would have crossed too many paths, but my mom was still into like dancing and shows. So I feel like our spheres would have eventually crossed.
If I was alive in the 70s, I probably would have been into the whole music scene, obviously, which I was into, during my life, but different. It would have been different if I was alive during that point. But she had a very, very strong likeness for music, so I probably would have got along with her.
Yeah. So Marty learns that, Biff is a science fiction writer, which is not something that's ever come up in conversation in the 80s.
See?
Because
he never would have assumed. He never would have assumed that his dad could be creative like that, because the only version of his dad he knows is the dad that he grew up with. So it's cool to see that he actually had dreams and ideas and, writing stories and being creative and into sci-fi, things that he never would have thought his boring dad was into, the version of his dad that he knows anyway.
Right. You see Lorraine getting hit on by Biff, and he is just all kinds of hands-on.
He's like, Lorraine, I know you want it. I know you want it. That's the kind of shit you get arrested for. Yeah, you get arrested for that kind of shit these days, bro.
Biff is very much the man in the man versus bear debate.
Yes. Such a stupid fucking debate, but yes.
Well, unfortunately, it's situations like this that make it have to be said.
And it only gets worse, too.
As you can see, we can talk about this shit for hours, so stay tuned for part 2.